We'll hang on a second. It'll be
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Cool. And now we'll start. People start coming in. I'll say welcome back, everybody. Our next presenter is Morgan Asoyuf from Vancouver, Canada. Thank you so much for joining us, Morgan. Take it away.
Hi. Should I just start my video right away?
Yeah, you just go for it.
There we go. Sorry, one sec. Is it working?
Your video is up, yes.
Okay. Right, so we're just going to get started. My name's Morgan Asoyuf. I'm a Northwest Coast artist. Tsimshian is my nation, and Cassine is where I'm from. That's in northern BC, Canada. And you can see here with the map a few of the other nations around me. We create artwork to be a part of visual law to support our culture, which is a lot based around our lifestyle of fishing and hunting and gathering, living off the land, which is something that we currently still do, is like eat primarily food that's caught by ourselves, and that's how we feed our families. This is my daughter when she was young, just to sort of like give you a bit of an idea of who I am and my family is. This is us at the big house. So feast culture is a big part of our culture. And we use the art form to support that and to show our familial crests, our histories. And these are some of the people that you'll see later in the video who were a part of my most recent show, Royal Portrait, which is all about basically about supporting our activists and our land defenders who are out taking care of our people and our lands and trying to fight for our missing women, or missing and murdered Indigenous women. So they're out doing all these things, and I'm just gonna pause it for 1 second. Okay, we're gonna share a song with you, but I just wanted to sort of explain that like these are people that do work for our people, and so I try to do my best to support that through the art form, and using the art form to sort of highlight who they are and what they're doing and promote their voices as well. So a lot of times, like, we like to traditionally share a song at the beginning of things, so that's what we're gonna do here for a second. So now we're just going to jump into some more sort of just a video of my work and the technical things that go in behind. You can see some of my models and drawings, and then we'll sort of come back around to Royal Portrait and some of the things that happen towards that show. I do a big mix of things, engraving, 2D design. Here you can see I'm building. I learned traditional goldsmithing off of a German goldsmith who has been in practice over 47 years. And so I've really tried to mix like different art forms together. I've also taken my gem setting courses. So here you can see sort of finished products of the mouse woman earrings, all hand built. They're hollow built, so the forms inside are hollow. And this is a bracelet that I did as well that features a lot of technical building, like work around hinges, and you can see here the solder on the piece, and the amount of flame that you have to have. So that was just creating the frame, and you can see here the layers that go into each piece. And the amount of heat that's required to actually melt the solder on pieces this size is quite a lot. Here's the hinge. So this is just kind of some process behind the technique of building this piece. So many times soldering. A lot of the pieces I work with, I soldered like up to, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 times. So definitely like a lot of technical work there, a lot of building supports, a lot of like soldering each layer, each piece separately. So here I'm actually fixing because I had a lot of issues with the hinge. So I definitely had to do things like go back, tear it back out and resolder again until I was finally able to get it moving correctly. So here you'll see my very satisfied hands when I feel this click where it's connecting the way that I wanted it to with the hinge and the click mechanism. And that's a little piece of abalone in there. So you can see how I mix like different art forms. I do the gem setting myself. I do the engraving. I do the goldsmithing and the building. I do inlay. But it's definitely a melding of different ancient cultures, really. Like all of these art forms are very ancient, including Northwest Coast art. So this is one of my rings. I really like doing like hollow box style rings. And again, just integrating like gem setting, inlay, that's black pearl inlaid in the eye. And then a gold, 18 karat gold sun. And this was I was asked to do this piece and I was like, I can't do that, but I just tried it out anyways. It's a different subject matter that I'm used to. This is a bear ring and a raven ring, an older piece of mine. So you can really see how I have, here, I'm just gonna pause it here, how I've been mixing the different art forms together. Like specifically trying to get engraving to work with hollow building was definitely a process that I had to learn and make a lot of mistakes with. But I was eventually able to figure out techniques that worked for mixing traditional goldsmithing with Northwest Coast design, and how to also make engraving start to become more 3D using building, which I'm still experimenting with. So this is going to be just a little more process sort of behind the rings, how I start them. So this right now that you're seeing is basically how I start most designs when I'm going to engrave them. I trace it on first, and then I paint over with like a white gouache, and I continue to draw and redraw and repaint until I'm really happy with the lines, and then I'm able to start the engraving. So that's just one part of the process. And this is a wolf and human in copper. And when the tongue goes together, they're sharing knowledge usually. So this was sort of a simpler ring. It was something that I was asked to do for somebody who was a wolf crest, but I really liked it. And again, you can see me incorporating sort of the building with the 2D design. This is a very 3D piece with the hollow building. And now we're going to take a look at this piece was basically like a version of a Belle Epoque style hairpiece or comb, you could call it. Again, you can see how I'm like sketching on first before I engrave anything. And you can see some of my engraving tools here. And you can see how I started to rough out this little face on this little guy. And my cutouts, so I take a little tiny thin piece of sandpaper and I have to sand all in there. And then I've set some little gems into the eyes. And the comb part itself is made out of steer horn, which is sort of a historical thing that they used to do, which I just like. So I wanted to try it. And you can see me here setting a hinge. Hinges are definitely difficult. That's why I keep doing them, because I feel like I need to do a lot of them before I am really going to start being comfortable with them. I still have a hard time with them sometimes. But this way you can have the piece so that you can wear it in different ways, like up in your hair, on the side, or you could even wear it in a pocket. So this is some of the process for some of the pieces that I did for my show at Bill Reed Gallery, which was called Royal Portrait. And it was like a pretty big solo show with quite a lot of pieces in it. I'm gonna pause this here again. So these are salmon bones, and they were featured pretty heavily in this show within necklaces. And it's kind of like a really special thing that around 8 years ago, I collected the bones of some of the salmon while I was fishing them um, up on the Skeena River where I'm from. And I just dried them out and I kept them. And I was eventually able to like take nature casts off of them and cast them into silver. These bones are so much work, but they were so special to me. Salmon is like everything to us. It's our lifeblood, and the bones have a lot of special meanings spiritually. So you're gonna kind of see how I used these mixed with trade beads, which is like a historical type of glass bead that most people call them Russian blues, but were highly prized within our culture. And you can see just soldering the different pieces. Like each necklace has so many pieces on it. You can see the little solder balls there. So this is just to show a little technically of what goes into just creating like one of these necklaces. This one in particular was like really heavy on hours and cost. And I used blue sapphires pave set. So you can see the finished product here just laid out. And this is like the land protection mantle. I called them the mantles of responsibility because especially like our women and two-spirit people highly populate land defense and activism. So we always say like we have a weight on our shoulders, like a mantle of responsibility that to protect the land, water, and the women and children. And that's a bear tooth on the bottom. I like to use a lot of natural materials if I can, things that come from the land that are usually gifted to me or that I trade for. So here's some photos from the show of some of the land defenders wearing the items and holding items as well. This is just a some of the models and some of what went into the crowns. So one of the big features of the Royal Portrait Show was the crowns. So I really wanted to show like modern. I'm going to pause that again. I wanted to show modern portraits of royalty and using mixed medias that to sort of show the royalty of the people doing this work. But it was kind of a crazy idea because I don't know anybody that makes crowns. So I was trying to figure it out technically. And this is a video here is of me soldering the smaller crown, which was the mouse woman crown. And mouse woman's like the protector of youth and the tiniest supernatural creature and like the grandmother in the oracle. So what I ended up having to do was just take long sticks of solder and heat everything and then just like try and get it in there really quickly. You can see the little solder stick here. Yeah, so here now you can you can see me trying to get it together piece by piece. That was just the safest way to do it so that nothing falls off.
Sorry for liking that.
can hear my daughter in the background there. So this is some of the finished product. This is the water protection necklace. And you can see the finished mouse woman crown here with the pave diamonds and the krenite set in. And this is it on Takaya. So yeah, I was really happy with how the finished product turned out here. You can see my engraving, which is the mouse woman designs, and then the gem settings. And this was the matching necklace that went with it as well. And so yeah, each, you can hear my daughter in the background again. She's always around. And then this is the second crown that that I produced for the show specifically. And this was sort of based off the ideas of shaman's crowns and also off of bent wood boxes, which are both sort of more traditional art forms for us. But I wanted to do something again, like where I'm mixing in my goldsmithing skills. So here you can see some of the historical inspirations, you know, that I researched before starting these projects. And then just some of my models. And starting to put together some more serious models for getting the sizes right and trying to figure out, you know, how I wanted things to look, honestly. And here's some of the panels. Okay. Sorry, I don't know how to get rid of this Q&A, one sec. I can't seem to get this Q&A off my screen.
Can you ignore it, Morgan? We can't see it.
And we'll take care of the Q&A at the end, so you don't have to worry about answering it now.
So here, this is my mentor and I, Rick Adkins. We had to get a couple torches going to get the big crown soldered. It was just, I soldered them in pieces and then it was just too big. And we needed heat coming from multiple sides. And there we are, sweaty. And then came the challenges of like, how am I going to set the gems on this thing? And I really just ended up making a contraption and taping it together to support it while I set them. And here I'm starting to put the fur on the base, which is a sea otter fur. And those are bear claws in the settings on top there. So we're just gonna pause this quickly. So now I'm gonna talk a little bit about the frontlets, which is basically the Northwest Coast version of the crown. And that's part of my inspiration for why I wanted to do crowns in the first place. So when I talk about like a visual law, like this is one of those things. Like a crown is a document of visual law, a drum is a document of visual law, and also of like spoken law, because the songs are only owned by certain families or performed by certain people. And same with things like the frontlets or even just the crest designs. So like an eagle to us is not just an eagle. It's like if it's an eagle crest, it represents a certain family line and only those people are allowed to wear that. So the frontlets are kind of a document of that as well. Only the people that have title to that would be allowed to wear them, and only like really high-ranking royalty would be able to really wear them as well. They need to be produced specifically for certain people. So part of what I do is also wood carving. And so this here is something that I wanted to go through a bit of the process, because I actually mixed wood and silver with this piece. And I wanted to try to like play around with just how can I change the art form by using mixed mediums while maintaining a really traditional look. So we're going to go through some of the process that went into creating this piece here, which is called amhalate in our language. So basically we just, like everything, we're going to start with sketches and some models. And this is me just roughing out the alder. So we like to use like hardwoods or semi-hardwoods for any headpieces. And this is the historical piece that I was studying by doing this piece. So it's kind of a mixed thing. I both did a study of an older piece and also a complete experiment of trying to mix mediums together with goldsmithing and wood carving. So these are some of the tools that I used to create the small faces. And I actually carved them out of ebony and then cast those after to go around the face. And this is just some of the process of inlay, which I use with my metal as well. I inlay in both in metal and wood. I quite enjoy inlaying actually. But it's a lot of finicky work with filing and fitting things in. So these are the waxes that I got back after I carved the pieces in ebony. And I had to alter those, carve them all down again, make them nice and thin so they could be cast. And I just did that using my woodworking tools. It was just the quickest way to do it at that time. This was one of the last pieces that went into my show. So it was definitely trying to get it done in time. And you can see here, there's a lot of cleanup, especially with casting sometimes and reshaping. I'm just gently trying to reform these faces so that they sit nicely the way I want them to, and they're all looking the same. I pretty much had to re-engrave all of them. And you can see I'm starting to try and lay them out here around the wood piece to figure out how I'm going to attach them and how I'm going to build that and logistically get it together.
Do anything. It's not that great, Like it still comes up in weird places. Like, like that Niglet joke. I told that joke in Alaska.
Sorry, that was like some comedy show in the background. There is, so I'm putting the teeth inlay in, and that's white pearl, which is like a type of shell. And this is a Musselman piece that generally would have been painted or carved onto the belly of the piece, but instead I made it out of metal and I inlaid it in. But this is me soldering it. So I had to solder still to get the eye settings. And there they are. And I soldered them in first and actually set the gems or the pearl in first. I did break it and have to recut it again. I soldered the pearl in. No, I soldered the eyes on, got the pearl in, and then I had to cut out around it. And that was how I kept those eyes stabilized, because I think if I tried to set them in after it was cut out, it would have like pushed back and forth and could have caused possible breakage there. So now you're going to start to see how I made the frame. And I had to do this with every single face. Like I soldered 2 eye settings onto every single one. So here's the eye settings. And then I went back in after and like re-engraved around them a bit. And this is how I decided to try and connect the two parts together, was just using a frame. So I kept all those pieces in the center to like keep it stabilized while soldering. And then I cut them out afterwards after I was happy with all the faces on there. So again, just like when I was doing the crowns, I was basically trying to solder piece by piece, just, you know, because the heat, it's so hard to maintain the heat and then things get dirty. So I just kept soldering, like I did certain sections and then I did the next section to keep it clean. And then getting this little guy painted and getting the inlay ready. And I inlaid that silver piece into the belly so it's actually recessed in.
So big news.
And these are all the eye settings for all those little faces. And I ended up in like a time crunch and had to set all of the eyes in the same night. Definitely the most settings I've ever done in a sitting. And then you can see, so what I've done is I've cut the frame and then I like pressure fitted in basically. I put holes around in the wood and then I pull it kind of open and pressure fitted the frame into it. And it actually turned out being quite light. Like it's definitely wearable, which is awesome. I'd love to see it danced at some point. But yeah, this is the other frontlet that I did. This is a historical frontlet, the next one there. That one's one that I did. And then the last one's a historical one.
Let's have a picture of you and Carl.
And this is just to sort of show an overview of the pieces that went into the show. And this is obviously just during setup. But just so you guys can even get a view of like some of my other work, these pieces are like hollow built pendants. That's a historical bentwood box. And then we'll come back again to the frontlets. So I wanted to put them next to historical pieces so that people could understand like how much I strive for historical accuracy with how thin my frontlets
gallery
are.
Since I remember when they first opened.
Yeah, and these again are just some other pieces of my work. That's the bear matriarch drum. That's the bear ring. The bracelet that we saw earlier. You can see the inlay there. And also earrings that I made with bear claws. So we're gonna see now the process of inlaying that last frontlet that you saw. And we'll just have to deal with my rap music, sorry. But yeah, so you can see like how the inlay works. It's actually like very multi-layered. It's not just one layer of carving out. You have to carve out for each piece differently. And now you can see how satisfying it is, like when you pop that inlay in and it all fits perfectly and looks completely flat. There we go. Holy shit. So I basically held my breath the whole time popping those in. That's you got to do it in one shot, because once you put the epoxy in behind it, like you just got to get it in there and hope that it sticks perfectly. And if you get your inlay in tight enough, it probably won't even come out if you try to get it out. So it's really just a one-shot deal once you go for it. There you go. You can see the multi-layers like around the other sides where I had to carve like all different levels so that this piece would look completely flat in the end. Yeah, I definitely don't breathe when I'm putting inlay in. I think that's the end of the video. Yeah. And you can see I'm really just like cleaning the inlay off after. And then after that, I would go back in and do the rest of the pieces. Basically with inlay, like I definitely try to just get like a whole section done and then stop, and then I do the next section in. But you basically have to test it again and again and again, just to make sure that it's going to fit properly when you do pop it in. And that's something that I just wanted to share, like the inlay here. Yeah. So there you can see how nice and flat and even it looks. But yeah, I just wanted to share that about the inlay with the frontlets, and I believe that's the end of my video.
Thank you so much, Morgan. That was fantastic. If we can send in some questions, that would be great. I guess my first question is, when it comes to imagery, how much are you working, or I guess how much variation on form do you have when you're using that imagery?
What do you mean by imagery? Like, you
Well,
mean like in Northwest Coast art?
Yeah, exactly.
Personally, I practice within a pretty strict Simshan style. So I like to keep the form like fairly traditional. But there's a lot of variation with materials and with how you want to depict things. I mean, it depends on who you are as an artist, because for me, like, because there's not a ton of people practicing in a really strict Simshan style, I like to practice within that style and keep it fairly tight. But I do mess around a lot with like materials. And you know, the designs themselves, people range between completely contemporary and completely traditional. Just depends on the artist. Yeah, I definitely like to practice a lot of like the really traditional styles, just because that's what I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. We've got one question from Esther Irvin. It's, what is a nature cast?
Basically, it's using like a special type of molding, which is called silicone molding. It's like a gentle type of molding that certain people do, certain casting people will work in, but you can take a mold off of very delicate things. So things like from nature, basically, that's why I called it nature cast. So it's just taking a mold with a different type of material that works better for casting things, like say you wanted to cast bark, or you wanted to take a piece of shell and like take a mold of that and cast it.
Excellent. We've got some more questions. Your work often, this is from Kirk Lang, your work often appears to have several steps to it. How much planning do you do before starting a piece, and how much room do you leave for improvisation throughout the process?
Yeah, so myself personally, I do a lot of planning. I like to make models. I usually start everything just with sketches in my sketchbooks. And then like move on from there to making physical models using just like either cardboard or paper, and then I continue on from there. I do leave a lot of room for improvisation though, because I do work fairly organically, and a lot of the time what I'm doing is kind of experimental technically. So even if I get advice from my mentors, they won't be able to tell me exactly what's going to work. So I have to definitely work with the pieces as well and what it allows me to do.
And then along those lines, Andy Cooperman asks, has silversmithing historically been part of the culture? And if not, when was it incorporated?
So no, silversmithing was not part of our culture pre-contact. We did work with copper. Specifically, we used copper as like an accounting thing. So coppers were how we expressed wealth and stuff, but not silver specifically. Basically, it was incorporated near first contact. People just started working with it when they got the materials.
Interesting. The It's really enjoyable to see the more high relief carving that you're doing with the wood sort of becoming part of that engraving.
Yeah.
And I wonder how that sort of mind space when you're doing that changes for you. Does it feel really similar? Does it feel disparate?
Do you mean like between flat and 3D?
Just going from wood carving to the carving in the silver
Mm.
and engraving.
I actually find a lot of things similar. I think I have a skill of like work using similar skills between different mediums, you know? So I actually, the way that I carve silver is like I carve it pretty strictly in the same type of style as our wood carving is historically done. So yeah, like it's really just made me better at both by doing the different art forms because I'm able to sort of transfer skills within them.
Splendid. Lynn Vandenberg asks, how did you become interested in being a metalsmith and working with a traditional goldsmith?
So that's actually an interesting story. I went down to Oakland to take some bronze casting courses at the Crucible and some mold making courses. And like I like to play with mediums. Like if I could try every one, I probably would. But so I was down there, and then I was kind of looking at IAA, and then I was contacted actually by a German goldsmith who had seen my work back in Vancouver. And he's like, I have a school, you know, would you be interested in coming to work here? And I took a look at his work and I was like, wow, I was like, you know, there's so many engravers out there, like Northwest Coast engravers that are really good. It never really attracted me. But when I saw the building and the German style goldsmithing with like, you know, using gold and silver together mixed and like 3D building, that really interested me a lot. And I hadn't seen anybody really working in that within that space with our art form.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of like try and discover how they could come together was just really interesting to me. And I was almost going to go to IAIA, but I got invited while I was down in the States. I was down in Arizona at that point to go to Germany and teach a course with children. And I said, oh, where's the course? And it's Constance. And I said, okay, but I'm going to be late to come to start school. And I said, no, like you can't be a couple of weeks late or we won't accept you. And I spoke to Gerald and I said, I'll be a couple of weeks late if I come, you know, is that okay? And he said, yes. And he said, where are you going? And I said, Constance. And he said, that's my hometown where I'm from, where my parents had goldsmith shops and I had a goldsmith shop there. And I was like, this is literally like, I got invited to where you're from, like that. It just seemed like the path, you know?
Yeah. Wow, that's an exceptional story. Is everything engraved, or is there also chasing and repoussé involved?
No, I'm just starting to learn chasing a repoussé with my mentor. So yeah, so far I only do engraving and building. But like I'm currently starting to learn to work in wax and repoussé as well. Yeah.
Very fun. We've got a tool question. What type of torch do you use?
I just have an orca torch that I like. It's pretty simple.
Excellent. And you define your metals practice as goldsmithing, yet there's not a lot of gold that you're smithing.
Yeah, I wish. Gold is so expensive. Like, obviously, I'd love to be working in gold. My technique and training is in gold. But yeah, right now, even like with the amount of silver just for 1 crown, it's like pretty insane, the cost of things. So yeah, I definitely like, I would say I work within goldsmith technique. I don't always work in gold. I would love to move more towards that, you know. Yeah. I work with it when I can.
Do your objects get a chance to be performed with or acted with? Or?
Definitely, like I try and set my business up in a way where I have patrons, and most of my work actually goes to community. So the majority of work I do is actually for Northwest Coast Native people. That's who owns most of my pieces. and the ones that aren't owned by them and that are owned by collectors, I make sure that those people are willing to lend them. Because it's really important to me that they're used culturally. That's what our art form was meant for. It wasn't necessarily meant for display or for just you know, sitting. Like these were living documents, and they're supposed to be alive and live a life and be performed and stuff. So
Excellent. I think these are all the questions that we've got coming in. Yeah. Well, I think that does it for us. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yeah, and we'll see you at the 3
Oh.
p.m. as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll see you there as well. Oh, I guess there's one more that got in. Molly Montgomery asks, what are your plans for future work? Are you currently working on a series?
Yeah, so I have a few things on the go. I am continuing with my headdress series because I actually did not get everything done that I wanted to as it goes, you know. So I still have like some tiaras and different headpieces that I'm working on that mixed medias with wood and silver and different gems and stuff. And then I'm also starting some large scale projects, which are like totem poles. As you know, that's actually a misnomer, but that's the way they're known as. And I'm trying to start working with mixed medias on larger scales. So like integrating metal and wood on large scale pieces. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's something to look forward to. Cool. Well, we will be having a Q&A with all the panelists at 3, I believe. So we'll get to see everybody back then. Thank you so much for joining us, Morgan.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. See y'all back soon.